Hello to all curious minds and welcome to this space for deep reflection. Today, we confront one of the most intimidating and fascinating figures of the 20th century. We're going to unpack the thought of a man who looked into the abyss of modernity and saw how our own reason was betraying us. We're talking about Theodor Adorno. His work is a warning cry about how the culture we consume, the music we listen to, and the logic we use to organize the world might be gently imprisoning us. Prepare to question everything you think you know about your own freedom. Before we dive into the analysis, a brief technical note. To bring this complex narrative to life, I've used artificial intelligence tools to generate the images you'll see. Think of them as a digital canvas, a way to illustrate the atmospheres and abstract concepts we'll discuss. I hope they help you visualize these ideas. To understand Adorno, we must first place ourselves on the stage of a fractured Europe. Born in 1903 in Frankfurt, Adorno grew up in an environment of high culture and music. However, his intellectual life was marked by the rise of a darkness that reason could not foresee. As a Jewish and heterodox Marxist in Germany during the 1930s, Adorno witnessed how the most cultured and technologically advanced society of the time descended into the barbarism of Nazism. This paradox is the seed of all his thought and the central question we'll try to answer today. Alongside his colleague Max Horkheimer, Adorno became a central figure of what we now know as the Frankfurt School. This group of thinkers wasn't content with merely describing society. They wanted to understand why humanity, instead of entering a truly human state, was sinking into a new kind of slavery. His exile to the United States during the war was an absolute cultural shock. He went from old Europe to vibrant commercial American society. There, Adorno didn't see total freedom, but rather another type of totalitarianism, a more subtle one disguised as entertainment and free markets. It was in this context, in 1944, that he co-wrote his masterpiece with Horkheimer, Dialectic of Enlightenment. This book is difficult, dense, and absolutely crucial. Its central thesis is devastating. The Enlightenment, the movement that promised to liberate us through reason, contains within itself the seed of its own destruction. We tend to think that history is linear progress, that we move from ancient myths and superstition to science and the light of reason. Adorno tells us this is false. He tells us that the Enlightenment is totalitarian. But what does such a serious accusation really mean? For Adorno, Western reason has become what he calls instrumental reason. We no longer use our minds to seek truth or the supreme good, but simply to dominate. To dominate nature, to dominate objects, and ultimately to dominate other human beings. The goal of instrumental reason is efficiency and control. Everything becomes a number, a piece of data, something calculable. When we reduce the world to pure mathematics and utility, we eliminate mystery, but we also eliminate the intrinsic value of things. Adorno argues that myth was already a form of enlightenment, an attempt to explain and control the world. And modern enlightenment reverts to mythology because it creates new idols. Technology, progress, and economic profit become untouchable gods to whom we sacrifice everything. To illustrate this, Adorno and Horkheimer analyze Homer's Odyssey. They see in Odysseus the first modern bourgeois man. Let's recall the scene where Odysseus wants to hear the siren's song without dying. It's a perfect metaphor for the repression necessary for civilization. Odysseus ties himself to the mast. He wants to enjoy art and beauty, the siren's song, but he cannot surrender to it. He must remain bound to survive and continue producing, continue steering the ship. He is the owner who enjoys, but is immobilized by his own power. On the other hand, the rowers have their ears plugged with wax. They cannot hear beauty. They can only work. They represent the modern working class, who must ignore distractions and concentrate purely on mechanical labor for the ship of progress to advance. This allegory shows us that dominion over internal and external nature requires repression. The price of progress is the mutilation of our capacity to experience full pleasure and happiness. We become tools of our own instruments. But the critique doesn't stop at mythology. Adorno brings this analysis to the heart of the 20th century. If reason is only domination, then concentration camps are not an accident or a deviation from civilization. They are, horrifyingly, the logical culmination of instrumental reason. In the camps, death was industrialized. Factory principles, efficiency, and calculation were applied to extermination. Adorno forces us to see that rationality without ethics, a rationality that only seeks the most efficient way to do things, can lead to hell on earth. This brings us to his famous and often misinterpreted phrase, "To write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric." He didn't mean that we should stop writing poems. He meant that the culture that allowed such horror cannot continue to exist as if nothing had happened. Affirmative culture, the kind that tells us the world is beautiful and ordered, becomes a lie after the Holocaust. Art can no longer merely console. True art must hurt. It must be dissonant. It must reflect the fracture of the world and not pretend there is a false harmony. Now let's shift gears towards the other major pillar of his thought, something that resonates very closely with us today, the culture industry. Adorno coined this term to describe how culture has become just another business, indistinguishable from manufacturing cars or shoes. During his stay in the United States, Adorno observed the rise of Hollywood cinema, commercial radio, and popular music. What he saw was not democratic art. He saw a massive system of manipulation designed to keep people passive, distracted, and obedient. The culture industry produces standardized cultural goods. Movies, pop songs, best-selling novels, everything follows predictable formulas. You know how the movie will end before it even begins. You know when the song's chorus will come. This standardization has a profound psychological effect. It trains us not to think. If the cultural product is easy to digest, it requires no mental effort. We become passive consumers who only react to prefabricated stimuli, losing our critical capacity. Adorno argues that the culture industry offers us a false individuality. They sell us supposedly unique products for unique people, but in reality they are minimal variations of the same mold. We choose between brand A and brand B, but the real choice has already been eliminated. Consider horoscopes, something Adorno analyzed in detail. The astrology column in the newspaper offers vague advice that seems personal, but applies to anyone. It's a form of authoritarian dependence. We seek an external force to tell us who we are and what to do. The most insidious part is that the culture industry promises happiness, but it's a promise that is never fulfilled. The advertisement tells us that if we buy this, we'll be happy. We buy, happiness doesn't arrive, and the solution they offer us is to buy again. It's a cycle of perpetual and unsatisfied desire. Entertainment, says Adorno, is the prolongation of work under late capitalism. We entertain ourselves to regain strength and return to work the next day. Leisure is not a moment of real freedom, but a time to recharge to remain productive within the system. Adorno was especially critical of jazz and popular music of his era. This is where many find Adorno to be elitist. He hated music he considered regressive, the kind that invites us to tap our feet without thinking. For him, that was a form of bodily submission. While his criticisms of jazz might seem outdated or biased today, the core of his argument remains alive. How much of our current music is a product of algorithms designed to hook us neurologically rather than challenge us artistically? Against this mass culture, Adorno championed difficult modern art like Schoenberg's music. Art that doesn't let you relax. Art that forces you to listen to suffering, dissonance, and complexity. For Adorno, only this kind of art holds a potential for truth. Authentic art, according to him, is that which refuses to be a commodity. It is that which says no to the world as it is. It is a silent resistance. In a world where everything is sold, the only thing that remains outside the system is that which is too difficult to consume. This connects us to another key concept, negative dialectics. Unlike Hegel, who sought a final synthesis where everything is resolved, Adorno insists on negation. There is no guaranteed happy ending. We must remain in contradiction, in the discomfort of critical thought. To think for Adorno is essentially to think against oneself and against consensus. The moment we feel comfortable with an idea, the moment everyone agrees, we've probably stopped thinking and fallen into ideology. Adorno also explored the psychology of fascism in his study on the authoritarian personality. He wanted to understand what makes a person susceptible to following tyrannical leaders. He found traits like rigid conventionalism, submission to authority, and aggressiveness towards those who are different. These traits didn't disappear with the fall of the Nazis. Adorno warns us that the conditions for fascism remain latent in modern democracy. As long as economic anxiety and a lack of critical thought exist, the ground is fertile for new demagogues. The famous F scale, or fascism scale, was an attempt to measure these tendencies. Questions designed to reveal hidden prejudices and desires for submission. It was pioneering work that blended sociology with psychoanalysis to diagnose the political health of a society. Adorno is often accused of being a hopeless pessimist, a bitter man who hated everything normal people enjoyed. And it's true his style is severe. He doesn't pat us on the back. But there's a paradoxical hope in his pessimism. His hope isn't in blind optimism that everything will turn out all right. His hope lies in the ability to say no, in the ability to look horror in the face and not turn away. Only by recognizing the magnitude of the problem can we begin to imagine a way out. Adorno wrote in a very particular way. He used aphorisms, short and dense sentences, structures that prevented quick reading. He wanted the reader to stop, to chew on each phrase. The style was part of his resistance against fast consumption culture. In his Minima Moralia, a collection of reflections on damaged life, Adorno shows us how the logic of capital infiltrates even our most intimate relationships. How we love, how we give gifts, how we talk with friends. Everything is contaminated by interest and exchange. For example, he analyzes the custom of gift giving. He says we've lost the capacity to truly give. Now we calculate the value of the gift, we expect reciprocity, or we give standardized gifts. The gift is no longer a surprise from the subject, but a social obligation. Adorno invites us to examine the microscopic details of our daily lives. In the way we close a door, in the way we greet someone, there lies the truth of our era. We don't need to look only at grand laws, but at small gestures. It's fascinating how he predicted celebrity culture. He saw that movie stars are not real people to the public, but empty vessels onto which we project our dreams. They are plastic gods who teach us how to behave, how to dress, and what to desire. Adorno's critique of television is devastating. He saw it as a machine that introduces dominant ideology directly into the living room. It turns reality into a show and makes us spectators of our own decline. But let's return to the idea of freedom. Adorno believed that in administered society, freedom is an illusion. We think we're free because we can choose from 50 television channels, but we're not free to change the structure that decides what gets aired. This vision can seem paralyzing. If everything is controlled, if reason is domination and culture is industry, what are we left with? We are left with critical thought. We are left with the capacity for intellectual resistance. The bottle thrown into the sea, as he described his own work. Adorno died in 1969 amidst the student revolts. Ironically, he had conflicts with students who wanted direct action. Adorno distrusted activism that didn't think before acting. He feared the student movement would repeat dogmatisms. A famous incident occurred when some female students interrupted his class by baring their chests in protest. Adorno, the great theorist of liberation, felt humiliated and left the room. This illustrates the gap between his rigorous theory and street-level political practice. However, his legacy is immense. Today, in the era of algorithms, social media, and fake news, Adorno is more relevant than ever. The culture industry has evolved into the data industry. We no longer just consume media, the media consumes us. Think about how recommendation algorithms shape our taste. They suggest what to watch, what to listen to, and what to buy based on what we've already done. This is Adorno's nightmare made real, the perfect enclosure within what we already know, with no possibility of surprise. The promise of the internet was total democratization, but Adorno would have quickly seen how it has become a space colonized by large corporations, surveillance, and standardization. Digital freedom is often just the freedom to click where we're told. Adorno teaches us to distrust what is easy. If something feels too comfortable, too obvious, we should be suspicious. Truth is often uncomfortable. It requires effort. It requires going against the current of what society shouts at us to think. His defense of individual autonomy is vital. In a world that pushes us to be part of the herd, to follow trends, to have the same opinions as our group, asserting one's own thought is a revolutionary act. But be careful, not the narcissistic individualism of selfies. Rather, the individual who is capable of reflecting on their own condition, who is capable of critiquing their own society out of love for what that society could become. Adorno doesn't offer us practical solutions. He doesn't give us a 10-step manual for freedom, and that frustrates many. But his refusal to give easy solutions is part of his integrity. To give a recipe would be to fall into the very instrumental reason he critiques. He offers us tools, lenses to see the world. He gives us the vocabulary to name our dissatisfaction. When we feel that something is wrong with pop culture, when we feel that politics is a spectacle, Adorno is there, nodding. Philosophy for him is the memory of what could have been. It is keeping alive the promise of happiness that the current world constantly betrays. It is remembering that things don't have to be this way, even if everything tells us it's inevitable. So how do we read Adorno today? Not as a prophet of the apocalypse, but as a cultural forensic pathologist. He examines the corpse of bourgeois society to understand the cause of death, hoping that perhaps, just perhaps, we can revive it in another form. His insistence on suffering is key. We must let suffering speak. In a society that forces us to be positive, to smile, to say we're okay, giving voice to real pain is the first condition for truth. Education for Adorno had one primary goal, that Auschwitz not be repeated. That is the ultimate aim of all pedagogy and politics. And for that, we need citizens who are not blind cogs, but conscious subjects capable of saying no to illegitimate authority. Adorno is difficult, yes. He is dense, yes, but he is worth the effort. In a world of tweets and 15-second videos, reading Adorno is an act of temporal resistance. It is reclaiming your right to depth, slowness, and complexity. We've journeyed from Greek mythology to the film industry, from concentration camps to atonal music. The journey with Adorno is a journey through the shadows of the Enlightenment. But it is in those shadows that we can find the most real light. Next time you watch a blockbuster movie, listen to the latest viral hit, or feel technology deciding for you, Remember this old German professor? Ask yourselves, is this what I want? Or is it what I've been told to want? Critical thought is the emergency brake on the train of blind progress. Adorno invites us to pull that brake, to stop, to look at the landscape and see if we're heading towards a worthwhile destination or simply towards the abyss. We don't have to agree with everything he said. His elitism can be irritating, his pessimism exhausting. But his diagnosis of the instrumentalization of reason and the commodification of life remains an indispensable tool for navigating the 21st century. True intellectual freedom begins when we realize the bars of our invisible cell. Adorno helps us see those bars. The rest, the attempt to escape, is up to us. If this analysis has seemed intense, it's because Adorno is intense. He doesn't seek to please, he seeks to awaken. And awakening is often a sharp and unpleasant process, but necessary to stop dreaming the dream others have designed for us. I want to thank you for joining me on this descent into the depths of critical theory. I know it's not light content, but I firmly believe it's vital content. Thank you for dedicating your time and attention, the most valuable resources you have. If this video has made you think, if it has provoked any doubt or even disagreement, then it has fulfilled its function. The dialectic continues in the comments. Subscribe to keep questioning reality together. Until next time,